This is Seeds Podcast, bringing you tips, conversations, and information about applied behavior analysis. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Seeds Podcast. We're at season 2, and this is yet another episode that's related to schooling options for children with special needs. Joining me today, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Shyielathy Arumugam with us today, and we're going to talk a lot about challenges for children with autism and special needs to be included in a classroom. And most importantly, Dr. Shyielathy today will share with us from a teacher's perspective. Welcome, Dr. Shyielathy. Hi.
Hi.
Dr. Shyielathy.
Hello.
Hi. Would you like to give a brief introduction about yourself to our audiences before we start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me for this session. I feel very honored to share my experience working with children or students with special needs from preschool, primary to secondary school.
Yeah.
So my experience is actually quite a wide range. And I've been working with MOE, Ministry of Education, since the year 2007. Right?
Wow,
so
that's a very long time.
Yeah, very long time. And I have a very diversified working experience with various categories of special needs, not just autism, but various categories of special needs. Right. So actually, I have been working with visual impairment first, because my first posting was to a visual impairment school to teach preschool children with visual impairment. So I was actually a graduate. I graduated from Malayan University in the year of 2006 with Bachelor of Early Childhood Education, which means it has got nothing to do with special education. And the year later, the year after, I was posted to a visual impairment school. So can you imagine that? So that was the first time ever I saw children who are blind. You see, I've never seen people who are blind except seeing them in TVs and so on. But it was the first time I actually I actually saw them in a very close contact. So I was there in that school for about 8-9 months, and then my second school was also a visually impaired school. Which is SMPK Tapak. SMPK Tapak Visual Secondary School, Visual Impairment Secondary School. So I was also teaching students with visual impairment, and I was also handling classes with multiple disability while I was in this SMPK Tapak. So I had students like visual impairment with other learning disabilities like autism, visual impairment and autism, visual impairment with hearing impairment, visual impairment with dyslexia. So that's why I said, I have a very diversified working experience, from preschool to secondary. And then talking about inclusion, right? So then it was in the year 2012, I got involved directly with inclusive education as my third school, which I was placed. They initiated a program specially for inclusion. So at that time, I had about 3 students to be placed in the mainstream classes. They were in Form 2, they were in Form 4, and one I had in Form 6. So 2 of them, they had visual impairment, and the other one was diagnosed as being a slow learner. So in this school that I had the opportunity to exercise all my theoretical knowledge of inclusion, which I have learned along the journey, to put into practice. So of course, we teachers had a comprehensive implementing guide for us to follow and execute the plan. And then after 4 years, in the year of 2016, I was awarded a scholarship by the Ministry of Education to pursue my doctorate degree in the field of early childhood education, special education, specializing in special education. So that was during my PhD days. I got involved widely in advocacy and attended quite a number of advocacy seminars, conferences, bringing awareness about the educational rights of children with special needs, promoting inclusion, inclusive education, and publishing articles on the importance of early identification for the mainstream educators.
All
So
right.
besides that, I'm also the advisor of National Parent Support Group for
Mm.
Children and People with Special Needs. So that's a little bit about me
Thank
for
you,
the
Dr.
audience.
Shyielathy. You
Yeah.
right, definitely have a very vast range of experience. Not only the number of years, but a lot of contacts with different kinds of special needs students, and also
Sure.
yeah, and also your education is really interesting. That you were from you did early childhood, and then your PhD early childhood specializes in special needs.
Special needs. Yeah.
Yeah, and
True.
did you was that three students that you spoke about inspired you to be advocating more in inclusive education and these kind of
Yes,
work?
definitely. Actually, after working with these three children in this inclusive program,
Mm,
only then I realized how our special needs students are not getting much opportunity to be in the mainstream
right.
because we still the mindset of our educators in the mainstream,
Mm,
they still think that special needs students must be in special schools or must be in the special integrated programs. Why
right.
they are here? So it's actually we have the program, but we do not have enough education empowerment program for the
Mm,
mainstream teachers. You see,
right.
it's like we just put the students there and we expect the teachers to perform, which is not going
Right.
to work, you see. So
Right.
I did face a lot of challenges,
Mm,
in the process of making inclusion possible for these three students
mm,
in the school that I was placed at that time. So I
wonderful.
learned a lot actually. I learned a
Wonderful.
lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Shyielathy, again, from your experience, you have worked, it sounds like you have worked in different kinds of classroom and special needs, mainly special needs classroom, and
Yeah.
then mainstream classroom. So that was what you meant by the inclusive class, right? It's a mainstream classroom where children with special needs are placed in
True.
that. And
Yeah.
the integration program is where they're in the same building, but their classes are kind of different. Is that the
Correct.
integration? All right,
Correct.
all right. So you do
So
have. Mm,
the special education integrated program, and we share the same building.
yeah,
You see, but the program different administration, but
different
we share the
administration.
same building. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, that was wonderful. So I just want to ask you this question as a special needs teacher. Right now, you are actually teaching in a special needs school. Is that right?
I am not teaching in special needs school,
Okay,
but I'm teaching in special education integrated program.
I
That's
see.
the difference between special schools in our country are for the visual impairment and the hearing impairment.
Mm,
So the rest are all integrated programs.
integrated program.
In Malay, we call PPKI. I think people know
Yeah,
better if I say PPKI.
yeah,
My
yeah.
program Pendidikan Khas Integrasi.
Integrasi. Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So my next question is, what is the most challenging part about teaching in PPKI and trying to place your student? And I'm sure because you're so passionate about this and you identify the importance of this and you want to see your students go try and integrate them into this classroom, this mainstream classroom. What is, can you share with our audience, what is some of the most challenging part during this process?
Um, Challenging part being a teacher in the PPKI, or
Mm,
challenging part doing inclusion for the students? Which one you want to know?
being a teacher in PPKI
Okay.
and
Being
having
a
this
teacher,
goal and having this goal
mm,
in mind. Yeah.
okay, being a teacher in PPKI, I would not say as challenging as doing inclusion. Right.
Mm,
Why? Because in PPKI, we already have a syllabus,
okay.
right? The syllabus caters to the PPKI students.
Right.
And then we stream them according to their ability. In PPKI, we don't stream children, we don't class children, students according to their age, according to their biological age, but we class them, we put them in classes according to their ability. So
Right.
here we face a bit of challenges in terms of modifying and accommodating the syllabus. See, the syllabus it's a syllabus for PPKI students, special integrated program students, but it's not that the syllabus is optimal for all. We still need to do a lot of modification to accommodate the needs, especially the low functioning students. We have low functioning, medium functioning, and high functioning. And we cannot forget that we have various categories of students as well. So now PPKI is like one program fit to all.
Yeah.
So this is the culture or the way our PPKI is going, right? So that one syllabus, various categories, various functioning level. So the challenges are there, I would say. So we have to be very creative in transforming the curriculum with motivating activities.
Yeah.
And from there, I see the potential students. They can go, we can upgrade them to the mainstream classes. These are actually students who are not really special needs. Okay? They might have been in special need programs by, maybe by mistaken. They may not have been performing well in the mainstream, and then the teachers in mainstream, knowing that there is a program, special education program, they might be convincing their parents and asking these students to come in. Okay, mostly these past 13 years, I have been seeing this type of students more, rather than students who are really having issues like autism. We have modified, we have conditioned the behavior, and now we're going to send them to mainstream. I have very less experience handling those kind of children. Most students that I have been doing inclusion, they are all actually can function very well by themselves.
Okay.
So these are the students that I actually identify because I am working in the secondary school, right? So they are bigger students.
Yeah.
So I see as they are being too comfortable in the PPKI program because the syllabus is not catering. It's not suitable for them.
Yeah.
And
they can do more.
Too bored, and they start having behavior problems, and they disturb the other students. So these are the students, I counsel them a little bit, and then I see a few things like, can they read their behavior condition first? That's the most important thing. Their behavior is conditioned. Secondly, can they read? Okay. Can they write? And then can they copy from board, and can they copy from books? If they have this syarat all these criteria, I'll be talking to the administrator, to the mainstream, principal, and we do inclusion because inclusion is a part of our KPI in our PPKI program. So in the school that I'm working now, currently, I have 3 students in the mainstream, which we did the inclusion early this year.
Okay. So how was the experience now for these 3 students?
I see them being so matured now.
Okay.
They come and see me every day. After school, they come and see me every day. I make it a point that they see me, and we have a support group. I established a support group, a WhatsApp group, along with their parents. And then I actually keep track on their progress. I talk to the mainstream teachers, not much of issues because they do not have behavior problems. As I mentioned just now, they are actually, basically they are typical students. It's just they are very weak in their academic. And unfortunately, they have been pushed to PPKI, and they should not be there. So, they get to take part in all the age-appropriate programs. In their classes in the mainstream, and I also try to get them involved in other NGO programs. Now we have a lot of virtual programs. So I see a lot of changes in them, the way they speak, the way they behave, the way they carry themselves. They are much matured. Their thinking is so matured compared to how they was when they were with us in the PPKI before.
Right. Wonderful. That was really, really good to hear because those are some of the successful cases, right, that you have seen. So was it during that process, because these are what maybe for the lack of better word, higher functioning students, right? And they did you meet with a lot of resistance from, you know, different parties, when because you are essentially advocating for them because you're making that recommendation as a special needs teacher. So how did you go about these, if there are any?
Okay. The school that I work now, actually, it's a very smooth sailing. But
Okay.
I had a lot of challenges in the year 2012 when I did the first inclusion. Okay,
Mm,
2012, back then, inclusive idea was still at a very baby stage.
right.
None actually knew about inclusion,
Yeah.
right? Especially schools where they have PPKI.
Yeah.
So in schools that where they have PPKI and we talk about inclusion in the mainstream meetings,
Mm.
people think that we are crazy. What's wrong with this teacher?
Yeah.
Why is she talking about putting these children into our classroom?
So the
What's wrong with her?
the expectation was they are in PPKI until they graduate.
Yes, this type
Okay.
of children should go to that type of school. They have this
Okay.
statement, I used to hear teachers saying this
Mm,
statement in the meetings when I actually, advocate. I
mm,
actually speak up for the students. So
mm.
it was very, very challenging, actually, Miss Go. It was extremely challenging in the year of 2012. And it took me about 2 years to get things right at the place
Mm.
to actually change the mindset of the entire school. Thank God, the principal was in support. She was the only one who was in support with the initiative that it took. And secondly, it was not my idea or
Mm.
my intention to do inclusion.
Okay.
The direction came from the ministry. You see,
Right.
it was the ministry's decision to have inclusion program in that school. So
Mm.
I basically got escaped by saying, here, look, there is a circular. So being a civil servant, I don't like to go against circulars. So
Mm.
if you want to go against circulars, that's up to you. Okay? So basically, actually, I empowered, I educated the teachers why inclusion is important, why the students should be in the mainstream classroom, especially. Remember, I told you just now, two of them were visually impaired.
Yeah.
Added on to the anxiety of the mainstream teachers. How are we going to
Right.
cope with these two blind
Correct.
students? How are we going to give them work? How are these students going to pass up their work to us? And how am I going to, mark this and that? And then when we explain to the teachers, do not worry about all these we have I will be also a resource teacher for you.
Mm.
Besides being a shadow teacher, I am also a resource teacher. The scripts that you all give, I will translate it into braille literacy, and the students will be able to follow. And the braille written scripts, I will actually transcribe it into the literacy,
Right.
our normal cited literacy,
Yeah.
and you will be able, the teachers will be able to mark
Mm.
the homeworks, this and that. So after giving them how do I say, a clear idea how
Yeah.
it's going to work, and then supporting the teachers as well. After
Yeah.
about 6 months, 50% of the teachers they accepted.
Oh, wow.
Left another 50%.
Yeah.
So gradually, it took about 2 years for me to actually put the idea well into everyone. And the third year, they started asking me, Teacher Shai, how many students are you sending this year? How wonderful is that? So the third
Right.
year, I started sending all those students who
Mm.
came to me diagnosed as low learners.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So
Wonderful.
apart from visual impairment, the others also went.
So what I hear from your this story is that mainstream teacher, it's understandable that initially they may be afraid, and it's no one's fault. It's just they don't understand to
How? Correct.
how to accept these students into their classroom. And
Yes.
so, Dr. Shyielathy, maybe can I just ask, so how was the process done? So it sounds like you are very involved in supporting the mainstream teacher. Were you able to then totally pass it on to the mainstream classroom teacher and focus on other students, or was it an ongoing process for all these children?
Okay. The amount of support given
Mm,
differs from child to child,
right.
right? From student to student. minimal support, moderate support, maximum support.
Okay.
Maximum support, if the student needs maximum support, the student may not be going to mainstream yet. See? So
Right.
usually the minimal support and the moderate support, they will go to the mainstream. So it's not like passing on entirely to the mainstream teachers. If the students with hearing impairment and visual impairment, yes, we need to give them maximum support in terms of resources.
Right.
Like, for example, I shared just now Braille literacy. The teachers in the mainstream, they don't know anything about Braille, right? So that is considered. And not only that, we need to transform the pictures into tactile pictures. Those things can be only done by the resource teacher in the PPKI, right? So this is something considered as maximum support, but not in terms of behavior or learning or anything else, to provide resources. So if they are not from hearing and visual category, visual impairment category, the others, the learning difficulties, autism, dyslexic, slow learners, you see. So we also see to what extent the condition of the child. If the child with autism is having a very severe behavior issues, then we won't be sending them yet. But the one with a very mild and the moderate can learn, can be seated calmly in the classroom, no behavior issues or very minimal behavior issues, right? So this type of students, I actually, I don't go into the classroom. We don't go into the classroom. We don't be the shadow, unless some teachers, they request. But mostly mainstream teachers, they don't request. They would say that after a week of visiting the students and so on, teachers would usually say it's okay, we can handle the students, it's okay. But what I do is, I do some modification, classroom modification, I call it as. What I do is, I request to the principal to place the students in a moderate class. That means not to a very smart class. Okay, looking at the intellectual or the cognitive level of the student, we decide where the student being placed. Right. So again, academic is not our ultimate intention, right? Academic is the last in my list. As long as they can read and write, I'm happy already. They will go to mainstream. That's it. Okay. But apart from the academic, the main intention we sending students to inclusion is for the awareness, the social adaptation, right? Living with typical people, because they're going to live with typical people. We all are going to live with one another. We need one another, each another, and so on, right? So we not to fear, not to frighten the students, we put them in a class where not much of students with behavior issues, the typical one. Not a very problematic class, a very moderate class, you see. Not very pandai and not very lemah also, a very moderate class. Secondly, what I do, I request to place these students somewhere in the front row. Whether first or second row, which is directly facing the teacher, directly getting the attention of the teacher. That's what I do. Secondly. Third, I find a buddy for the students. Each one of them, they will have buddy. See, so that I choose the buddy. At the beginning, I actually observe, and then I see, okay, which one can actually click well with the student. And then I ask the student, I ask my student, are you okay if I put you buddy with Karen, for instance? I see you talking with her quite often. I see you going with her quite often. Do you mind? Are you comfortable? So they are okay about it. And then I also ask Karen, do you mind to be a buddy to, Fatiha or something? And if Karen agrees, we also have a lot of documentation. I need to get permission from Karen's parents to be a buddy for the child. And a lot of documentation also involved here, whereby we have a guidebook from the ministry. So we do assessment, the initial assessment that enable to send the child to the mainstream. There's also a checklist for that. And we also have an approval letter from the parent. We call the parents to the school and we give them some a briefing about how the inclusion goes. Some parents, they don't want the children to go there because they are afraid of bully cases and so on. So coming back to this, Ms. Code, actually, I would like to talk about this. When we talk about inclusion, there are two ways inclusion is done in our country. Right? The first one is through the special education integrated program. Can I show the slide?
Yes, go ahead.
I have the slide, but we have been talking.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so we have to understand how inclusive education actually is being done in Malaysia, in our country, right? We are we are here, so let's talk about
Yes.
our own country. Right,
Correct.
so there are two ways. The first one is through the special education integrated program, which we call as PPKI. So how do we go about it? The parents register the children with the special education unit in JPN, Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri. Ya. In Malay, it is called Unit Pendidikan Khas Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri. Whatever negeri you are coming from, like Perak means JPN Perak. So it can be with or without OKU card, doesn't matter, right? Even if you don't have an OKU card, you can still be placed in the special education integrated program,
Right.
PPKI. But of course, it is suggested to have an OKU card so that the child gets the privileges, quite a number of privileges.
Yeah.
Right? But it's up to the parents. It's not a compulsory thing.
Okay.
It's up to the parents. Now, over here, the special education teachers will do the inclusion once the teacher feels that the child is ready.
Okay.
Right? If the student is in primary, most likely, depending on the condition of the student, of the child, inclusion depends on the condition of the child in the primary school. Sometimes it may take 1 year, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, sometimes even a third. Right, if the child needs more support.
Yeah.
In secondary school, I would say it's a bit more earlier. We do inclusion a bit more earlier. For example, if they come to us at the age of 13, maybe 6 months time, I observe they are ready to go. They do not have any much issues. Then in 6 months time, they are off to go for mainstream classes. Right. So this is inclusion through the PPKI.
Right.
Right. Secondly is inclusion by parents in any national schools. So what I mean is parents initiate the inclusion effort. Parents put in for the effort. And we must also understand this, that all the national schools are inclusive schools, which means that children or parents have all the rights to decide which school to send, to decide where their children goes, which school the children goes. So parents have all the rights to decide on that. So that's why I mean that all the national schools are inclusive schools, which means all children can go to any national schools preferred by their parents.
Right? Whether or not the school has a PPKI in it.
Yes, doesn't matter whether the school has PPKI, no PPKI.
Right.
Okay, as long as the parent thinks that my child would go to a mainstream school, that's totally acceptable. It's the rights of the parent and also the child.
Okay.
Right. So this is something that we need to understand.
Right.
So as I mentioned just now, okay, how to decide, we have discussed that.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing that I would like to, okay. Okay, the other things I would share once we come to that session.
Sure, no problem. So I think that Dr. Shyielathy, just now we talked a little bit about parents, right? So can you share, I'm pretty sure, and you also shared about how you spoke to parents, the importance of getting parents to come to the school and understand this whole process. Can you share with us what can, or share with our audience, what can parents expect or advocate for their children when they're in this kind of meeting, this kind of school meeting?
Okay, now, if the child is going for inclusion through PPKI, it's actually a lot of ease on parents because entirely the process is being handled by the teacher. The PPKI teacher or the resource teacher. So not much of role the parent play because the teacher play the role. Any issues pops up in the mainstream, the PPKI teacher will step in first to solve it. And then the teacher would inform the parents, okay, I had a complaint from the class teacher about this. Can you just keep an eye on your child at home and things like that. But I would say 95% of the work is done by the PPKI teacher, who are in charge of the child. Okay. Now the thing is, if the child is going for inclusion not through PPKI. That means the parent initiate the child to go in to any mainstream school. There, the parents has to play the role, 100% the parents have to play the role. Parents need to advocate. Parents need to do just what the teachers did in PPKI, the parents need to do. So what the parents need to do? Of course, the parents need to know what is there in the blueprint, our education blueprint. What is being stated about inclusive education? Chapter 4, students learning. Right? They have spoken about inclusive education, whereby in 3 waves, inclusive education will be implemented fully by the year of 2025.
25, yeah.
By the year of 2025, 70% of children with special needs or students with special needs must be integrated in the mainstream school. So parents must know. Secondly, parents need to know about zero reject policy.
Yeah.
This policy is available in Google. You can just type out the name and you get it, you read about it. Zero reject policy says that no national schools can reject any child.
Right.
So third is, of course, parents need to, you can negotiate. There's another policy called SDK policy. Suka Relawan Dalam Community. Okay, this is the policy. Okay, what parents can do or how parents can help teachers, right? Parents initiated inclusion SDK policy. Now, this SDK policy is actually a policy that will allow parents or someone where the parents engage to go into the classes to be a shadow of the child. What the PPKI teacher did, now another person will be doing. Another person will be shadowing the child. But of course, this is, although we have the policy, this is the policy, although we have the policy from the government, from ministry, but this is more of like a negotiation between the parent and the administration. Okay, it is not a compulsory thing for the administrator to accept it. Right, and it is very new. Not many schools will allow an outsider to be in or a parent to be in the classroom. So parents need to know the content of this policy so that they can advocate or they can negotiate with the administrators wisely to have a win-win situation.
Right. And I think a lot of parents and teachers do not know about this SDK policy. So thank you for bringing this up, Dr. Shyielathy. So I do have a question from your sharing earlier. So if a child is in PPKI and can the parents also initiate, kind of say that, kind of discuss with the special needs teacher that, hey, can we talk about, moving my child to a mainstream classroom? Can that conversation happen?
Okay. Actually, yes, definitely parents can do that. But again, when parents initiate, the teachers in PPKI, actually teachers in PPKI, parents don't even need to come and talk to us.
Okay.
When the moment we know that the child is ready, we are the one who will be actually talking to the parents.
Right.
See, in most cases, we know when the child is ready.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So, it depends on the PPKI. Are they in support of inclusion? I know most of the PPKIs are in support of inclusion. Because it is already a government policy and it is related to our KPI, so we are in support. So it's but again, if the child is in PPKI and we know the child is very brilliant, very intelligent, and our syllabus cannot cater to the intelligence of the child, and it's just that the child is having a bit of behavior issues, then we would definitely try out inclusion for the student. And this will happen more in the primary PPKI schools. In secondary schools, mostly the behaviors are settled.
Right.
And not much of issues we face. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that it's already in the KPI, and that's why a lot of schools are in support of inclusion. Yeah. So Dr. Shyielathy, how just now we also discussed a little bit about how special needs teacher or how do you help the teachers? And I think you have a slide there with some points of discussion. How can we better help these teachers to set up an inclusion classroom for our students?
Right. To set up an inclusion classroom through PPKI, the PPKI teacher, the resource teacher will do that work.
Right.
They will do the job, right? So what they do? Like what do teachers, what can the PPKI teacher, the resource teacher do to help these mainstream teachers? It has to be a shared responsibility.
Right.
So it has to be, it cannot be just a passing baton to the mainstream, or it cannot be just the role of a PPKI teacher. It has to be joint, a collaborative work, you see.
Correct.
So usually what we do, okay, when we have students for inclusion, and this is the first time inclusion is happening in the school, let's say. So what we do is, I usually, like in this school, this is the first time we are having inclusion. Thank God that things went on smooth. So what I did, I provided hands-on workshops for the school administrators and also teachers on inclusive education and the related policy. I didn't even prepare my own slides because Ministry of Education already prepared their own slides.
Right.
So it carried more weight when I was presenting it. It came with the ministry's logo and so on. So it, with some citations, like for example, blueprint, and I also explained, briefed to the mainstream administrators, the PK1, the curriculum PK, the co-curriculum PK, the discipline PK, and also the principle on what is the zero reject policy. Because they need to know why they must come here.
Right.
So I briefed to them about zero reject policy and what is there in zero reject policy. So that is basically the first hands-on workshop. That's an initial workshop. Secondly, I provided ongoing training for all the mainstream teachers on behavior management. In secondary school, when we talk about behavior management, it's not of like the behavior that we have with children with autism and so on, right? This will be mostly like more of like a typical behavior of other children, a typical behavior of a teenager, you see. So my training was more of like, do not actually stigmatize the behavior of these children just because they carry a label.
Right.
Okay? So their behavior is the same as the other children's behavior, students' behavior that you have in the classroom. When you can tolerate them, you can definitely tolerate this also. When you can come up with strategical plans on how to intervene the typical one's behavior, the same method you can be used here. It's just that in these children, in these students, you have my support. I will step in. I will come in. You see? So this idea, I thought that I need to put very clearly into the mainstream teacher's mind. That just because these children carry a label, that doesn't mean that the behavior is something alien than the other typical ones.
I totally agree with that.
Common thing, common perception mainstream teachers will have. Right? But then I also educate teachers about differentiated instructions. Now, what is differentiated instruction? I didn't mean to say that they need to come up with different instructions or different way of teaching just for this particular group of students which I sent for inclusion. We must understand the struggle the mainstream teachers are having. They have about 40 students in the classroom and 40 students of different learning needs, although they are typical. And teachers are also burdened with other documentation, other clerical work, paperwork, this and that. That's also one main reason why they find it very difficult to accept special needs to come in, you see, because we are already burdened with so many things. Why these students are coming in? You get it or not? So I actually ease them, I actually talk to them, motivate them, and give them a very clear picture that not much of work that you're going to do for these children. It is going to have them as a whole class. So what does it mean by differentiated instructions? Maybe you can give them a different learning materials, a simplified learning materials, something that they can actually, they also do. If you, of course, in the classroom of 40, we don't give one same material to everyone. We are doing it. We are doing differentiated instructions in the class. It's just that we don't name it as it. right? We don't have the term, we don't term it, but actually we are doing it. So the same thing you're going to do for these students. Maybe you're just going to make it a little bit simpler. You simplify that. That's all you're going to do it. Right. So if the other children, they copy one whole paragraph, maybe these three students, taking in considering their ability, maybe they're slow, and so maybe you just ask them, the teacher just ask them to copy half page. See, this is what I mean by differentiated instructions.
Okay.
And then from there on, you move on. Once they are able to copy from half page to full page, that means our mission accomplished, our objective tercapai.
They have made progress, and that's what.
Yeah. So when I explain all this, when I make things simpler for them to understand, actually I see teachers' acceptance level increase.
Right. Because you're actually showing them that it's something that they have already been doing. It's just with different set of kids and students.
Exactly.
Right.
And then I also ensure, I promise and I ensure them that the special education teachers are always there to support. Yeah. They are the shadow teachers if needed. Anytime I will step into the classroom, if you need me, do not hesitate to call.
Right.
So this assurance I give them. Don't worry about anything. If you need me, just ping me, I'll be there.
Right.
So these are some support, emotional support that we offer to the the mainstream teachers.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will accept if we can do this.
Yeah, it's really a lot to be a mainstream classroom teacher already, and I think all they need is really a lot of support and resources and reassurance, like you say, that resources are available. So I guess we've covered that resources part that I had for you initially. The question of, are there any resources that teacher can turn for to help? I think we've got our answer. Special teacher, resource teacher is always there. And just one question, Dr. Shyielathy. So these are the steps that you listed down on your slide to help this teacher. This is on your own initiative?
Yes, this is on my own initiative. Okay. My own strategical plan materialize inclusion in my school.
Right.
Secondly, there's also the role of a shadow teacher, which I think is it okay to share?
Yes, go ahead.
As I mentioned just now, some students, they need a bit more support, right? The ones with what do you call that? Some behavior issues.
Yeah.
You know? So how do I shadow and how do I fade off?
Yeah.
Right? So the first thing I do, right? So the first thing I do is shadow teachers' position in the classroom is very important. In the child initial stage, we can sit facing the child, especially when it comes table task. When it comes to the time that they need to do table task and they need support, they need help on that. Secondly, once the child is able to function by himself, the teacher distance a little by standing behind the child and let the class teacher take control. Right? The third one is, this happens during circle time or perhimpunan, or the assembly, morning assembly. Teachers sit beside the child. Right? The fourth one, this is already the fading process, the last process, distance standing. Slowly stand at the back, at the distance, and gradually move out.
Right.
So this is what I do. And this is one model that I came up with. Okay, it's actually a play model that we use in early childhood education. Remember, I'm from that background.
Right.
So onlooker, my model for successful shadow assistance, onlooker, which means we observe the child from a distance and we give the opportunities for the teachers to handle. Right. We don't interrupt, immediately. Interrupt only when desperately needed. I wait until the teacher look at me. Then I go in.
Right.
Then solitary, which means let the child do work independently. May cue him from a distance if he appears to be off task, and then can step out of the classroom and only enter when it is needed. Right. And the third one is associate, which means associate the child with a peer in the classroom to prompt the child to complete work. Right? Maybe the friend. Right,
The
Karen,
buddy.
tell Fatiha. Fatiha, quickly complete your work faster. Teacher's asking, teacher, we must pass up to the teacher and so on. So usually the one sitting next to him. So this is the model that I actually practice in the classroom.
No,
And I also advise this, I give this model to parents also if they want to go in as a Shyielathy.
right. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your model. It's actually your name is on it. Shai's model.
Yeah, sure.
That's so wonderful.
Play theory.
Yeah. So just now you also mentioned a little bit about when you talk about differentiated learning. So we maybe need to start from what they're able to do now and then progress from there. So, but bear in mind, they are in a mainstream classroom and there is a syllabus, and they need to sit for exam. So just now you also mentioned a little bit that to you, academic achievement is your least concern for these children. And being in an inclusive classroom, you really want them to be in that social environment that when they grow up, they know they are going to be in contact with all the other children, all the other students, right? So how do we how do we balance that out? How do they, I guess the question would be, how do they sit for exam, for example? How do they progress through the years, through the secondary years, form 1, form 2, form 3? Yeah. What's going on in there?
So when I say that academic is last in my list, I did not mean that I pay less attention to it.
Right.
What I mean is, okay, now as I say, inclusion and the strategies for inclusion differs from child to child. It's not one method fit all. So basically, when we receive a child, we need to study the student first.
Right.
I study my student first. Then I see their academic level.
Right.
So as I mentioned, the basic ones are already there. Now, what they need the most, they need to adapt themselves first.
Right.
Once they are comfortable in the place where they are, gradually the learning will come in.
Right.
When they're not comfortable, they're having a lot of issues in the new environment that they are in. Without settling that, we cannot expect the academic to come in. Secondly, these special needs students, they have exaggerated years of schooling, which means 17 years old, not necessarily that they need to sit for SPM.
Right.
They can be in school up to 19 years old.
Okay.
So if they have to repeat Form 4 twice, or they have to be in the Form 5 class twice, that means the first year of Form 5, they don't do exam. The second year of Form 5, they do exam. To me, it's good enough. It's fine. It's not a problem.
Right.
So learning, and then again, I would always ask the mainstream teachers. Now you have 40 students in the classroom. Are they all going to get A's?
No.
Are they going to? Are they all going to pass their SPM or PT3 exam?
No.
We still have the weak ones, the good ones, the moderate ones.
Right.
So when we can accept the weak ones and the moderate ones, why we cannot accept these students?
Right.
Why are we talking about their academic level or academic excellency to be in the mainstream?
Correct.
Because that's one reason usually teachers give. They cannot cope with the mainstream. But are there other typical ones are coping with the mainstream? Are they all coming to school with homework done? Are they all coming to school back, their bags full of their books? No. Right? We also have students who are very weak and we accept them. So we must be very clear. Don't get mixed up with the label.
Right.
With the label that students come. So when you talk about academic, to me, academic excellency can be achieved anytime. The most important thing is survival in the society.
Right. Right.
See?
Right.
So gradually, with the support of the parents, usually I will suggest to the parents, if you can afford, please send him or her for extra classes outside, getting some tuition classes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Support the child outside. And some of the subjects like PJ, art, some non-exam subjects, I would actually pull the students down to the PPKI and coach them.
Right. Right.
In
Give them
PPKI, we
extra
also
support.
push the students extra. So
Right.
I think that's good enough in terms of academic excellency.
Okay. All right. Understood. Excellent. Excellent. So, Dr. Shyielathy, do you want to share? There's a resource teacher. So just now we mentioned resource teacher. That's we talk about mainstream teacher, special needs teacher, and then resource teacher, right? So
Yes.
just to clarify, resource teacher is also a type of special education teachers.
Yes. Okay. Now, in special education, we have the special education teachers.
Hmm.
Now, if that school, that program is doing inclusion,
Yeah.
then there will be two roles. There will be two
Okay.
teacher roles. The first one is the teacher who are in charge of the inclusion program. She will be the shadow teacher,
Hmm.
or in Malay we call guru pendamping.
Right.
Right? She'll be the shadow teacher. Now, these resource teachers, they are in charge of inclusive education in the visual impairment and hearing impairment schools.
I
Hearing
see.
impairment and visual impairment program where
Right.
they are doing inclusion. Why? Because the teachers need to have certain skills of providing resources for the
Right.
mainstream teachers.
The
Right.
transcribing
So,
work.
transcribing and so on. Actually, it's more for teachers who are handling visual program, visual impairment program.
Okay.
Right.
All
So
right.
the work is more on that. So the resource teachers' role is basically for that group.
Right. Right, right. Okay, wonderful. So, Dr. Shyielathy, before we let you go, at the end of this episode, I really want to thank you for all your insights so far. But before we let you go, because you have so many experiences, can you share with our audience some of your success stories on some students that you work with that you have successfully assimilated them into an inclusive classroom, and what is the experience like?
Yeah, sure, Miss Go. I would love to share. I have a lot of experience,
Mhm.
a lot of success stories, but I'll just pick two which I think very significant and quite current as well. So
Right.
if you can remember, if the audience can remember, I mentioned just now, inclusion can be done in two ways. One through the special education integrated program, and the other one is parent initiated.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share one through the SEIP,
Mm.
the integrated program. Okay, right. Okay, I think I missed the slide. Okay, never mind. So the success story from special education integrated program, they are my three students from my former school, which was in 2016. I left the school, and they was my first three inclusion students, and now two of them are blind students and one with a slow diagnosed as slow learner.
Right.
Recently, they text me and they say that they have completed their SPM and they are doing diploma program. Two of them, the blind students, the visual impairment students, one they have got a place in the Maktab Perguruan Institute Perguruan Teachers Training College for a degree program.
Wow.
Yeah, to do on course on brain.
Yeah.
I mean on visual impairment, to teach visual impairments. It's a very huge success. It's a very great. I know, I'm so happy to know about that. And the other one, he actually graduated with a Bachelor of Law from University Malaya. So
Wow.
it's a very, I am so proud of this boy.
Yeah.
Totally blind. A total blind student, and now doing a master's in law in the same university. He got a scholarship from the ministry. And the third student, also diagnosed as slow learner. Remember, I mentioned just now.
Yeah.
He is doing diploma in early childhood education in one of the private university in Ipoh itself.
Wow. He must be inspired by you.
Yeah, and happen to be that I'm also an adjunct lecturer in that university, and happen to be that he is my student now. That's very, very inspiring to me to see this boy again learning from me for diploma program, and I always talk about him in the classroom, how much he struggled to be who he is now. So that's about a few success stories from inclusion through SEIP. Now I would like to talk about this inclusion through a parent who did inclusion initiated by themselves. So these
Yeah.
parents, they actually found a low enrollment school
Mhm.
and only one primary class with 3 students in that school.
Okay.
So they decided to do inclusion for their child. So what they did, they found a low enrollment school and there's only one class. And then what they did, yes, of course, the child had a lot of behavior issues. He was wandering around the school without shoes, and there was a monkey bar. There was a monkey bar in the school field, and he got so obsessed during the classroom lesson. He used to come out, refused to write, although he knows how to write,
Yeah.
and never complied with the teachers. And then the worst part, sitting on pupils' tables, scribbling on the worksheets, and all this kind of havoc he did. And what happened? Came the big no from the school. Then the parents negotiated for the shadow aid, got a support letter from the pediatrician. Finally, the school agreed for a shadow aid.
Mm.
And then what happened? After 6 months, he understood that he has to put on his shoes because this is not his kindergarten any longer. This is a primary school where all children need to wear shoes. And then he doesn't. He goes to the monkey bar only during the recess time. He knew the boundaries and so on.
Yep.
Able to comply with period transitions. And by August, amazingly, the same year, he was able to copy lessons from the whiteboard without a fuss. And also able to do writing tasks. Now, what happened? Later, the mother also became a shadow aid for the child. And what they achieved, yes, he was able in terms of social, he achieved what he achieved. A partial verbal child was able to remember his classmates' names, wants to make friends. And then when the bell rings during recess, he knows that he has to return to classroom from the monkey bar. And he has to play, in the field more rather than with the monkey bar. During the PE time, he really goes to the monkey bar not to be in the group. And then he started having preference to choose friends. He knew, he started saying who he likes and so on. And he had a very lovely classmates. So this was his midterm result. If you look at it, it's not a very great achievement. C, D, E, A, music, he got A and all those things. And 2016, this was his, writing, the way he wrote. 2017, improved. And now this is what he does. And he's about 11 now. So this is how he writes now.
Wow.
And the peer support I mentioned, I actually blurred the picture because it involves children.
Of course,
so I call it colors of love. We see a lot of love here. See how the friends are supporting the child. The friends are typical children.
Yeah.
This is what. Can you see the board, how they are supporting each other? You cannot go out, you can't. So it's it was very beautiful. So I would like to end this by saying, this world is for everyone. So let's love each other, embrace, and celebrate diversity.
Right. And that is the essence of inclusion.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Correct.
Right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Shyielathy, for joining us today and giving us so much insights into what's happening in MOE schools. And I think it's very commendable that you also advocate and initiate a lot of these initiatives within the school that you're working with and make it happen for your students. And that's the importance of the teacher, the role of a teacher for your students. So thank you very much, Dr. Shyielathy.
Thank you, Ms. Go. Hope to see you again.
Yeah, definitely. That was Dr. Shyielathy. We thank her once again for joining us at Seat Podcast.